Good afternoon, world. This is the NRC Black Table Talk podcast, and today we have another episode because it's January 31st, and we always like to date the times that we are podcasting. So here we are. I got a very special guest. I got a friend and a brother, and I'll allow him to introduce himself.
How you doing? My name is Mike Palmer-Bey, and I'm the executive director of the Evolving Door program.
Mr. Palmer-Bey, how you doing today, bro?
Oh, I'm blessed. I'm feeling good. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to spend time with you. You know, we spent time together many years ago, so I'm happy to be here.
You know, it's definitely a pleasure. You know, you're a busy man, so I don't get a chance to see you too much, so I had to call you in by way of podcast, you know, get an interview with you, spend some time with you.
Indeed.
So, you know, I know you, but tell the world a little bit about yourself.
My name is Mike Palmer-Bey. I'm a lifelong Washingtonian. I'm also a returning citizen. I am an educator, a mentor, a grandfather, a great-grandfather, a husband. I am a family man, but most importantly, I represent our community. That's my most important thing, our community, like strengthen our community. So that's my primary focus, and that's what I do on a regular basis.
That's a lot going on right there. You're a well-rounded man.
Yes, I am.
But great-grandfather, though?
Yeah, great-grandfather, man. Like like 6 months. Yeah, 6 months.
Papa.
Yeah.
Hey, Papa.
Yeah, that's me. But I don't deal with them yet because they ain't in the walking and talking stage, so they just blabbering right now. So I wait till they get a little older before I spend time with them like that.
Okay, all right. Well, look, man, you know, we're called the National Reentry Network for Returning Citizens, as you know, and you have stated that you are a returning citizen. So, how much time did you do?
21 years.
21 years. Life sentence, but they giving out more than that, huh, man?
Yes, they are. So it's a blessing to be here, and I don't take it for granted.
So what type of challenges did you encounter while doing those 21 years?
For the most part, it was just adjusting to being in that type of environment. For people who haven't been in prison, like they don't understand that it's like a subculture there. There's a way of doing things there that's different from normal society, and they may frown upon it because they haven't been there, you know. So it's just, you know, you find, like, for me, I spent a lot of time in maximum security, so I wasn't, you know, around or in the open so much. So it was easy for me to, like, study. So I did a lot of studying of myself and studying my surroundings.
So when you say maximum security, that means you was down Lorton behind the wall?
Yes, I was in Lorton behind the wall.
And you know, we know how it is behind the wall. You know what I mean?
And that definitely was a different type of mentality that, you know, went on back there. Like, I'm talking about crazy. Like, so all prisons have, like, violence and things, but it was all of the other stuff, like, besides the violence, like the weird stuff, like people. I mean, you just had to adjust mentally to being in a situation like that where you get a minimal time out of the cell, you know, to shower, recreation, and so on and so forth, but you spend a lot of time in the cell, locked in the cell. So it's not like normal population where you move around and there's so much going on. So you have more time to think, more time to reflect, and that can be a good thing and a bad thing, it depending on the individual. So some people weren't able to handle it, so they had to get, you know, medication or whatever they had to do to try to cope with, you know, being alone with themselves, because that's a thing in itself, like to have time to yourself. Some people can't handle that.
Right. They got so many distractions. They're doing so much that to sit down and actually, you know, think about and reflect on themselves is like, that's too much. You can't look at yourself in the mirror.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what it is. It's like you have to be comfortable with yourself, because if you're not, it's going to drive you crazy. Like, you know, like, and some people do things to mask the fact that they're struggling with being alone, so they make noise. They're always talking. If they're not talking, they're banging. I remember it was a guy, I don't want to say his name or whatever, but it was a guy that he used to bang all day long, all night long, and like people used to be like, shut up, but he just kept making noise, like, or he couldn't take the silence, and like maybe it like drove him crazy or whatever the situation may be. So those are the things about jail that people don't really understand, like, and a lot of these young people don't understand, like, the worst part about jail is being alone with yourself. Even if you're in the cell with somebody else, you still are alone with yourself, because sometimes your cell partner might be in his thoughts, writing a letter or reading a book or at school or whatever. At some point, you're going to be alone with yourself, and that's a difficult thing to a person if they're not prepared to face themselves. That loneliness part, that's the worst part about prison to me.
So you did 21 years, and that we know you was down Lorton, and that means you left. When they closed down Lorton and sent us into the Fed. So where did you go after Lorton?
Okay, so the first place I went was a prison called Red Onion. It was in Pound, Virginia, like right on the borderline of Kentucky. And that was, it was completely different from Lorton in the sense that, this is a thing. Like, I know people, a lot of people have told stories about Lorton and so on and so forth, but the resources at Lorton were terrible. Like, it was terrible. Like, you literally had, like, I had one uniform, I think, for the entire time I was down there. Like, 8 years, 9 years, I had one uniform. Like, they claiming that it cost X amount of dollars to house us per year, but none of this money was being spent on us. You know what I mean? Like, where was this money going? We were getting minimal amounts of food, minimal everything. Like, even the cosmetics that we were getting was like stuff that was inhumane, and like, I can tell that they weren't spending the money on us that they were supposed to. So it was like a struggle, and because of that struggle and those conditions, it added to the violent behavior. It added to the aggressiveness. It added to all this. The conditions were created by the administration, that weren't suitable for rehabilitation. They weren't suitable for proper self-reflection. They weren't suitable for a person to develop. It wasn't suitable for a person to maintain, a connection to society. So it created, like I said, a subculture. And that subculture was crazy at times. It was fun. I'm not going to lie. Like, it was fun at Lawton, playing sports and doing all the things. But it was a subculture that was created, and it was perpetuated, and it was supported by the administration or the people who were supposed to be in charge.
So Lorton to Red Onion.
Okay. Now, Red Onion was, for me, it was a shock, because now I had, like, I was in the wall, so we were able to have our own TVs, radios, and things like that. But when we got to Red Onion, the first thing that I saw was that it was like mostly European white officers, as opposed to Lawton, it was mostly black officers.
Right.
The greeting that we got when we got there was they had like guard dogs, and we pulled up in the bus. I remember, like, it was like this long ride up the hill, maybe a half an hour going up a hill. And when we got there, you pulled into the area, and you can see, unlike Lawton, which had a wall around it, they only had fences. And I'm like, man, this joint light right here, they only got fences and everything. So when we pulled into the prison area, they brought attack dogs on the bus. Wow. And they were and we were handcuffed and shackled, and they got these dogs like foaming at the mouth and everything, like barking at us. And so, people that, this is scare tactic, right?
Right.
So then after that, the guards would grab you and tell you to get up and walk out the bus, and they put a taser by your heart. They did this to everybody. And they say if you fall or you move or what, they're going to tase you. So now you're panicking because you don't want to slip, trip, or stumble with these shackles on. And, all of this was a scare tactic. Like, everything is about control.
Right.
So in prison, the administration or the prison guards are taught and prepared to maintain control over the inmate population by different methods. And so when one doesn't work, they try others, and this is when you end up getting, locked down while you're in prison, or get your privileges taken away. And all of these things, this tactics to maintain control, that's what it's about.
So you went from Red Onion to where?
from Red Onion, I went to USP Leavenworth.
Oh, the big house.
Yeah. That was it. I went from Red Onion to Leavenworth, and that was another like it was just a shock after shock. Like when we got to Leavenworth, it was the first thing is that they didn't let us go on the compound like they let other inmates because we were from DC.
Right.
We were treated differently, so they sent all of us to the quote unquote hold, and we went there and they let a couple of us out at a time. And the thing is that they were sending busloads in every week, 40. So we were filling up this hole that they had, and they were letting a couple out at a time. And when you come out, they did something that I'm sure they didn't do to everybody else. They brought us into this room, and they told us, okay, you're from D.C., you belong to the D.C. Blacks. And, we know, okay, this is your address that you lived at. Your neighborhood is here. They're beefing with this neighborhood. Like, all of this stuff, I'm like, where did they get this from? Like, they pretty much put you into a gang when you get, to the federal system. This is how they were doing it. And this is when they first started bringing us in. Mm-hmm. So now it might be different, but that's what they did. They told you, you're part of the D.C. Blacks. You're from this neighborhood. Your neighborhood is beefing with this neighborhood, this, that, and so on and so forth. And this is how it is. This is where you sit, in a child hall. You eat together. Basically, they was explaining to us how to behave like gang members.
True. And for the world to know, this is where I first met Mr. Michael Palmer-Bey.
Yeah.
My first cellie on the compound in Leavenworth.
Yeah, the big house,
The big house. And it was a real culture shock because we went from being around our own to coming to the feds, and we go around pretty much everybody in the United States, or United States territories. So, it's like, huh? And it was like the warden had a town hall meeting throughout the whole institution. Hey, the DC Blacks are coming. Y'all need to stop beefing with each other because they gonna come in, they gonna tear the joint up. So y'all need to be together against them.
Yeah, and that was a thing too. Like they were telling us, like, man, they said that the DC guys do this and do this, and so basically what they did was prepare the whole institution to be against the guys from DC.
Yeah.
And so when we got there, it was already a mentality in place, a reputation in place, but we hadn't been there. Like it was only like maybe like 30 or 40 guys, and at the peak, I think it was 500. It was like we were like 500 deep, and so that made the administration uncomfortable. It made the other people there uncomfortable because it was like nothing they can do, like physically, or like it was too many of us, and they used to complain about that, like they can't have anything, or they can't control, like, the thing about the difference between the federal system and a DC prison or Lawton was that it was organized. They had the Italian guys. It might have been a small group of those. They even had the Asian guys that was organized, and it was gang culture. So everything was organized and it was done functionally as being organized. But for us, we was just do what you do, and they tried to get us to form like a gang and to come up with a leader, somebody to represent us and everything, and we refused that because that's not the way that we were brought up. That's not the environment we came from, of somebody being above and telling everybody else what to do and so on and so forth. So it was a struggle to adjust to that, and not that we had to adjust, but it was a struggle, like I said, because in prison there's a subculture, and in order to function in these subcultures, you have to mentally adjust into this type of environment. Even with the religious communities, the Muslims, the Christians, everything, like they have to stick together and function together, like, and that's a crazy thing, but this is the way prison is. It's a subculture, so you have to, in order to not be insane or go insane, you have to learn how to adapt to it.
A lot of men, they adapt to it in the negative way. Where they get to where they call institutionalized or even burnt out, to where they so into the culture that they're not good for society.
Yeah.
But which brings me to my next point with you.
Uh-huh.
Not only are you a morally upstanding, upright man out here in the community, but this started. I didn't know you prior to prison, but in prison as your cellie living with you, you had a high moral standard.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, so sometimes that wasn't it was a good thing for me, but sometimes people ain't like that because it made them feel uncomfortable. Like, I had people say, I think I'm better than somebody, or I done been called Jesse Jackson and all this stuff. Like, people joking with me, like, but I made a decision, like I could have chosen to continue, being foolish like I was when I was younger, but I made a decision that because, we had life sentences back then, that I didn't want to waste whatever time I had left. I wanted to do something that I can be proud of, because when I look back and reflected on my life, like I said about being alone with yourself, you get a chance to reflect. And I was like, I never did anything that I was proud of in my life. Well, when I was in elementary school, they allowed me to paint this wall in the lobby of my elementary school, and that was it. That was the only thing I could look at and say, well, I was proud of my whole life, right? So I said, well, I'm going to try to do something. And I started reading, and I started studying myself, and just saying, like, what can I do differently? Can I be a little more conscious about the way I speak? Can I be a little more conscious about the way I interact with people? Can I be somebody that offers positive encouragement and so on and so forth? But I wasn't perfect, but I was consciously trying to better myself, because I'm like, if I never make it out of here, if, whatever the situation, I can at least say I did something that I can be proud of.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where that came from.
A lot of times, that's kind of like, being like counterculture. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You like the salmon going upstream. Everybody flowing down here.
Yeah, that was
and
me.
You going up, so that could be tough at times.
Yeah. I mean, it was. Now, I'm not gonna lie, it was. But at the same time, when I'm getting familiar with myself and I'm studying myself and I'm understanding that it's okay to be an individual, with that individuality comes a certain amount of freedom. Like, of course, you got to guard the freedom. Like, at times, somebody might, be unwilling to accept that and want to try to enforce their culture on me. So you got to be prepared to defend your, unfortunately, you have to, sometimes you got to man up in a situation. Right. For the most part, it was okay. Like, people just said, well, I stay away from him because, nobody can't tell him nothing, but he don't bother nobody. So, just leave him alone or whatever the situation may be. But my focus was, like I said, this doing something for myself. Like, and it was difficult because at first it was difficult because you already feel alone in prison, even though you're not, not alone actually, but to feel like, there's a smaller group of people that, you congregate with or whatever, so for me, I had to find a balance in that. So I participated in sports and other things, extracurricular activities with everybody. And I had fun and everything, but I tried to avoid certain things that I knew, like just using my common sense. Like, I know that, if you gamble, it's an opportunity that somebody gonna try to cheat you. If you're selling drugs or whatever, it's an opportunity somebody gonna try to cheat you. If you're messing with the same sex or whatever, you're gonna have to defend that at some point. All of the pitfalls that people fall into, I try to avoid those. So I studied it. I tried to look at people and say, okay, he like to gamble a lot, so he always in something. Or this person over here, he moving this or he's selling this or whatever. Like, it's fine because he's making money, but the flip side is that is you dealing with other criminals. Mm-hmm. So eventually, like, you gonna have to do something to somebody for that. And I'm like, if I have to dig myself further in the hole by doing something to somebody or whatever, I don't want it to be something that I created.
Right.
So I tried to eliminate those things and, like to minimize my opportunities or the possibilities of me having to defend myself or have to do something to somebody based on what I'm interacting with. So that's what kept me away from certain stuff. If I find myself even like playing sports, sometimes you find yourself playing sports, and that's the opportunity for people to stretch out and say things that you don't approve of, but they say it in a line of we playing sports. You know, I did this, you such and such and such, you know, getting comfortable with that. So I made conscious decision not to let people get comfortable with me. So if they did jump out there and say something like that, they purposely wanted to cross that line.
Right.
So, you know, me, I guess the best way I can say it is that I used my mind while I was in there. Like I used the thought process that was necessary to survive and move through the environment that I was in, you know, because a lot of times, you know, we not developed properly. And then when we go into prison, you know, that lack of development combined with, you know, the conditions that we in causes us to regress.
Mm-hmm.
So it's easy for a quote unquote grown man to revert back to childish behavior because of the conditions they in, because we not properly developed, you know, and that's another motivation for the program that I have, which we'll get into, but that's what it's about. Your thought process will dictate your conditions, you know, so how you see yourself, whether you're in prison, whether you're in society, whatever, how you see yourself will influence the conditions that you find yourself in. So for me, the way I conducted myself, it opened doors in prison, you know, to move around. I ended up getting a job working in, you know, the education department, and, you know, they gave me an opportunity to institute my program in a small scale, but because of the way I conducted myself.
Right. I mean, man, it's to me, an individual as yourself, you're a stronger man than the individuals who actually, you know, was known for, you know, for putting in the work. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I mean, it's easy to act out in rage.
Yeah.
It's easy to act, you know, and be a brute beast.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But, you know, it takes a stronger individual to go against that type of subculture, as you said.
Yeah.
And you know, go upstream.
Yeah.
I mean, but it builds character.
Absolutely.
And it builds fortitude.
Absolutely.
Because you were different. And it's nothing wrong with being different, as you call it, individuality.
Yeah.
So what brought you to a point to where, you know, there's a saying, which is a true saying, is that what you do in prison, you know, you're doing in the free world. Yeah. So transitioning from the Palmer-Bey, from prison, leaping over to the freedom side. Yeah. We all know it feels good. Mm-hmm. But what was the transition like?
So the first thing, and this is the thing I tell people that's coming home, like the first thing you're going to have to do is adjust to the time difference, right? And, you know, you might ask, well, what's the time difference? Okay, what you visualize or imagine in your mind, okay, this is going to happen when I get out, this is going to happen. It doesn't happen that way. So you would have to be prepared mentally to deal with, you know, the things that you're going to face in society. And one of the things you're going to need to deal with that is patience. You know, you're going to have to develop patience. And that's something that we should be learning while we're inside.
True.
And then you're going to have to, and in addition to patience, you're going to have to be sure of yourself in a way that the difficulties that you face are not going to deter you from your destination. Like, because sometimes people have hopes and aspirations, but they meet adversity and they give up and they revert back to doing the same thing they were doing before they went to prison or while they was in prison and so on and so forth, because they don't have that resolve. So it's good to have a plan, but you have to have resolve connected to that, or resolution. I'll use that word. You have to have resolution, like, because you're going to face some difficulties. Even if you have connection, or even if you had money when you came home, so on and so forth, you're still going to face difficulties. Mm-hmm. And because you've been in that subculture, you're going to have to adjust to that. Because in there, when you face adversity or difficulty, you know, one of the things that you're taught is that you're supposed to step to somebody, or you're supposed to, if they disrespected you, you got to do something, you got to correct. You know, so you got people coming home with this mentality, and they haven't adjusted. Like, I remember one of the first things I remember is that I was in a line at a McDonald's, and so it was like a young guy right there, and like 3 other people came and got in the line in front of him, right? he knew him or whatever situation may be. So I'm sitting there looking at it, and I thought back, like, I remember I had an incident when I was, before I came home, I left USP Big Sandy, and because I had been in maximum security the whole time I was locked up, so the last, I think, 18 months, my counsel recommended that I get transferred to a lower facility so I can start preparing for my parole board hearing, because they was like, if you go from the maximum security, they probably not going to. Well, anyway, so like the first week I was there, it was a guy like got in the line like right in front of me, and I was like, excuse me. No, I was waiting in the line. Real, real professional, real respectful. And it was like a gangbanger dude, you can tell by they got the little bandana. So he's like, this my homeboy right here, man. I was holding the space for him. I'm like, how can you hold a space for somebody? And then he was like, man, mind your business, old head. So I'm like, so at this time I'm like, well, I'm thinking in my head quick, okay, is it worth it? Is it, whatever situation may be. And one of the guys that we was locked up with, he was there. He came to me, and he saw like and he was like, man, don't pay attention to that or whatever situation. And I'm like, man, I'm good. I just composed myself because, like you said, it's easy for us to respond in an animalistic way. It's more difficult for us to function as a human being, to process things. So this is, an example of me having to process on the fly. So when I experienced that, and that was like my first week there, and that's what people kept telling me, that the FCI is different from the pen. It ain't like the dudes and so on and so forth. So that's what I started working on next. I started working on how I process, the situations I'm in, how I process my emotions. So that was the evolution of me becoming, a better version of myself. How do I process my emotions? How do I take what it is that I'm doing in this particular second and make the best decision possible in this particular situation? So that was an experience that had me start a new chapter, which is, making decisions on the fly and doing critical thinking and conflict resolution. So I started doing that. I started to develop, for lack of better words, a program, in myself. Like I'm going to work on. And so I come up with scenarios in my mind. Okay, what do you do when this happens? Or what do you do when this happens? Because a lot of times what we feel is involuntary actions are things that we had in our subconscious anyway. So it's something you've been practicing. Like when you say, if somebody step on your shoe, what you going to do? Or if somebody call you out your name, all of this stuff you've been practicing in your mind. So when the situation takes place, you already condition yourself to respond, bang, bang, bang. This is how it goes. So it's never just spontaneous. It's something that you've been creating in your mind over time. So for me, I started thinking of scenarios. What would I do in this scenario? So when I get to them, I'm already practicing it. So it's not difficult. It seems like it's easy. It seems like, man, you got it all together. No. I've been practicing.
Oh, that helps you out here in society.
Yeah.
So the Palmer-Bey out here in society, you come home. You experience what was going on in the McDonald's. How you got exert and express and practice patience, and you see that the subculture is way different from culture.
Yeah.
So you get a job. I know you got a job because the type of man that you are. So you got a job. I know one job you had because you sent postcards back when you were working with the African American Museum.
Yeah. So when I got to the halfway house, there was it was crazy. Like that's another thing. Like I said about when you come home, adjusting to the time difference. It was a thing called what was the name of it? Scooby Doo or some kind of something that they were smoking.
Oh yeah, the Scooby.
Yeah. So when I was in a halfway house, I was seeing all the youngins like leaning and doing it, and they was like, old timers, man, you can smoke this and they can't, it ain't gonna be in your urine and all this, and I'm like, nah, I'm good. Like man, it's cool, man, you ain't got it. And I said, nah, I'm good, right? So first of all, I don't move according to peer pressure anymore. I used to be a follower, and before I went to prison, I was a follower because I wanted to be accepted by everybody. And so that was the motivation for me to get involved in things because I just I wanted to be accepted. So now I'm looking at it like I got to do me. So I'm in a halfway house, and like most of the people there are doing the same stuff, doing a lot of the same stuff they was doing when they was in, and so on and so forth. So one of the caseworkers, she saw that I used to, when I come in the office, I might get my mail or get my stuff or whatever and go ahead about my business while dudes be in there trying to be in their face and whatever. So she pulled me up one day and she was like, I like the way you carry yourself. You different from, whatever. And I'm like, I appreciate that, but, I'm just trying to get out of here. So she said, would you be interested in a job? I said, absolutely I would. So she gave me a number and I called the guy, and for real, he was like, come down there and fill out the application. But I filled it out, but he never got back with me because the real reason he offered the job is because he was trying to get with the lady. Mm-hmm. So, he really wasn't on that. So I ended up getting in a school program with Marco Price Bay. It was a barber program. And so while I was waiting on a job, I was filling out applications and everything, and I wasn't getting no feedback. I even went to 7-Eleven. I went to all these different places to apply for jobs, but I wasn't getting no feedback. So I was going to school every day, and they called me and was like, no, this what happened. So my sister got me a job at the airport. I was working at Reagan National Airport for like a month, and while I was working there, it was just a crazy thing because the guy that's my supervisor, he hired me because he was attracted to me, right? And I knew this. Now but he, and my sister was like, he asked about me and everything. So I'm like, I know how to work around that. I just need a job so I can start generating some income. So I'm out there, and he, say little remarks and all that type of stuff like that. And but I can handle it, So I was just working. Man, I wasn't even getting no breaks or nothing. I was in that joint working straight 8 hours, no lunch break or nothing like this work because I was working in fast food and I was like the head cook. So I'm in there because that's another thing. I started working in the kitchen, food service when I was in prison. So I was a head cook, so I couldn't really take a break. People was always or whatever. So I was like, man, but I can't quit. I'm tired when I come home. It's a dip, but I can't quit because I'm focused on staying out here. Mm. So I just dealt with it like, and I'm like, something better gonna come along or whatever. So like I was there for a month. Then I got a call from the guy saying, yeah, you filled out an application a few months ago, such and such. You still interested in the job? And I was like, I already got a job. And I was like, well, what are they starting off at? And at the time, I think minimum wage was like $10 or something like that. And he said $12.50. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, you don't want to know what you had to do? Nah, I don't want to know. I just, so I told him, man, when you want me to meet, so I came and, whatever. And I ended up getting with a company called Clark Construction. And, the backstory, they used to be George Hyman and Omni. And it's the biggest construction company in the world, right? And so they had an apprenticeship program. So with the apprenticeship program, which I found out later, they would get money from the government to bring guys in that just came home and stuff like that, and to offer them training for 2 years, and then after that, you're on your own or whatever situation. So I got with that. And so I did end up working at the African American Museum of History and Culture, which was a great experience for me. To see it from the mud to, the finishing product, like it was a great experience, and there wasn't a lot of African Americans working on the site. Like it was more Hispanic. So the few people that were working there, we had a different sense of pride, like doing the work. Like it was motivation, and we would like saying, I'm gonna tell my grandkids when I get old, and such and such and such. So we took all these pictures. We weren't supposed to, like they bring in artifacts and things that, supposed to be secret and they got them covered up or whatever. We got pictures. I got all type of pictures in my phone, all type of, so, but it was a great experience. And, that's one of the things. Like, the crazy thing is I haven't been back there since it's been open.
Wow.
I want to take my mom and let her see the stuff that I was a part of, and parts of that building that I was directly, responsible for, and so on and so forth. But yeah, that was one of the experiences I experienced, one of the great experiences. I did work on a few buildings or a few projects. We did the Chinese embassy, and the Chinese embassy was crazy because even though it's in D.C., it's considered Chinese property. And so we have to follow the rules of the China. Like, we have to go through a border every morning, which is crazy. You got to have an ID to be able to walk on the property, and we got to wear certain stuff. But the Chinese people can just come in there. They don't have to have hard hats on, or they got the little suit. I don't know what they call those little suits with the little flat shoes. And we got steel toes on, and it was hilarious. And then they don't speak English, so you got to kind of like,
body language.
Yeah, it was a different experience for me, but what I did notice that they were working together. Like, I try to learn from every experience I have. I did notice that they were working together. Like, that's where the strength comes from, and that's one of the things I feel we lacking in our community.
So let's fast forward. We got a few minutes left.
Okay.
I want the community and Black Table Talk family to know about Palmer-Bey and the Evolving Door program.
Okay, perfect. So the Evolving Door program is a program that I loosely started in USP Leavenworth in 2003, which was I wanted to get some of the young guys to make an attempt to better themselves in spite all of the pressure for them to just fall in line with everything that was going on, like doing all the stuff that everybody else. I wanted them to start reading and working on their writing, and like being more hygienic, like learning how to be men as opposed to following what everybody else was doing. So I talked to the administrator, in Leavenworth, the education administrator, and I explained to them what I wanted to do with like young guys that were coming in, because they were shipping a lot of young guys straight from DC jail to the feds. And so I wanted to help them get their GED and help them to, get on the self-improvement tip. So, that's what I started doing. And of course, some of the young guys are like, man, ain't nobody trying to hear that black brother stuff. And, like, and some of them same ones, I laugh about it now when I see them out here, and that's what they talking about, And I said, oh yeah, you right, Palmer-Bey, but I would, so I ain't gonna call them out, but it's some people moving around the city but that's what it was about. I was like, if we had an opportunity to know something, that'll help us out, it can make our conditions better. Like, so that's what I was on. I tried to help, the young people, not just the young people, but I try to help people to change their mentality and try to improve themselves. Like, start working on something that will better their conditions, regardless of our time, regardless of the fact that we don't know if we ever gonna get out of prison. It's never a wrong time to do something good for yourself. Mm-hmm. So fast forward to today. When I came home, I started out with mentoring, like not necessarily verbalizing things, but mentoring by leading by example. I want to show you that you can get a job and you can still have all the fly stuff. I want to show you that you can be respectful and you still can be looked at with respect. I want to show you that you can open the door for women and you can, you can be clean and you can smell nice and all those things and still be you. Mm-hmm. And so I started that. And then we started feeding the less fortunate, because once upon a time I was homeless when I was a young person, and I remember what that was like to not have food. So we started feeding the homeless, and I was like trying to get help from people. I'm asking them, like, well, won't you donate or whatever? And they like, do you have a nonprofit? And I'm like, no, I'm just doing this out of my pocket. And it's like, well, if you had a nonprofit, it'd be easier to get assistance or whatever. So I went through that process, and in 2020 it became official. And we gave it a name, the Evolving Door Program, because a lot of times people look at our conditions, whether it's in prison or in society, and they say, well, it's like a revolving door because you never get out of it. So I changed that and said, well, we're going to grow. We're going to move forward. We're not going to continue to live in the mentality that we live in now. And that's the thing that we struggle with in our community, like this poverty mentality. Like, we pass that down to our kids. And that's why you see certain communities stay the same for 50 and 60 years because the thought process is not changing. Right. So this program, to make a long story shorter, is just to help people change that mentality, to grow out of that poverty mind state, to start thinking ahead and start building blocks and buildings and taking steps to move out of that mentality and become a better version of themselves. So in a nutshell, that's what the Evolving Door program is. It's a community program that's focused on changing or shifting the paradigm and making people in those communities that need it understand that they can be better and they can improve on their conditions just by changing the way they think and act. So that's it in a nutshell.
Brother, you're one smooth, eloquent speaker, but the actions are even greater.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
I really appreciate what you're doing in the community.
I appreciate
what you're doing for our people.
Absolutely, every day.
I appreciate you as a family man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You're a great example of how us as black men were supposed to, not even portray, but how we're supposed to be.
Exactly.
Because you can portray something else, but be something different.
Exactly.
So how you are, you're embraced and you're loved, man. And I'm always gonna salute you.
I appreciate it, man. I salute you.
We shaking Kobe, man.
Yeah. That's another story right there. They don't know about that. We get on that court, We get on that court. Oh, well, yeah. I played basketball last Friday with some young kids, and I tried to grab a rebound, and I ain't even get off the ground. I said, I got to stop back. I ain't been working out. I've been driving around to these meetings and all this stuff, but I got to get. But yeah, man, I appreciate what you're doing here. And this is a great opportunity for, returning citizens to have an opportunity to catch up. But not only that, but to be acknowledged for something positive they doing, because so many times all you hear about is, man, back in the days, I used to do this and such. And that's why I try not to talk about those things.
Mm-hmm.
I try to talk about what's going on now because the past is dead. Only thing we have to deal with is where our feet are right now and what we do from this point. So, that's what my focus is. Focus on the future. It's not focus on the past. So I appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Appreciate you too, bro. This is the NRC Black Table Talk Podcast. And with my guest, Brother Michael Palmer-Bey.
That's right.
He has the Evolving Door program.
Yes, check
He's
us out.
helping the youth, helping out the community. And like we always say here, we may be signing out, but we're not signing off. Boots to the ground. And like Palmer-Bey, do good, y'all.
Yes, sir.